Now, although reports of a planned 5% surcharge on petrol and diesel sales has sparked debate among citizens, the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Taiwo Oyedele, says the levy is not new. In an interview on facts about the new tax laws of the country with the State House last month, he explained that it is provided for in the Federal Road Maintenance Agency Amendment Act 2007.
Explains it. There's a law that was enacted some years back with a surcharge on fuel under the FEMA Act. This is a provision that is now in the new tax law, and it does not take effect as of January 2026. I know some people have been giving wrong information about this. What is in the new tax law is that this surcharge will take effect on a date in the future based on an order to be released by the Minister of Finance. And we do know that Minister of Finance is responsible enough to determine when it's appropriate to do so. The intention is to earmark and dedicate the revenue from this tax into providing transport infrastructure that can reduce the cost of transporting items, logistics, and overall bring down inflation for the Nigerian people.
There you have it. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. Now, as opposition mounts against the proposed 5% tax on fuel and diesel, I'm now joined by Kelvin Emmanuel. He's an economist and energy expert. Kelvin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
If anybody understands the numbers and its implications, it's you. So we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
You've heard from Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. You've also heard from Peter Obi, who has talked about this debate. We've heard that it's not new and that only the Minister of Information can decide when it should go into effect. But is there enough reassurance for Nigerians who are reeling from effects of the economic policies of the government?
Adishwa, I am going to present the two sides. I'm
Yes.
going to give you numbers on Nigeria's road infrastructure, 200,000 kilometers of road infrastructure, 65,000 paved, 135,000 unpaved. We have Trunk A, Trunk B, Trunk C. Trunk A are federal government roads, Trunk B are state government roads, Trunk C are local government roads. Trunk A is about 18%, about 36,000 kilometers. Trunk B, controlled by the states, about 16%, about 32,000 kilometers. And the remaining about 66% are local governments. They constitute the most part of the unpaved roads in Nigeria, which is the reason why the work the fiscal committee, tax reforms committee is doing on local government autonomy and trying to disjoint the joint revenue committee between the states and local government is good, so that local governments will have not just finance to be able to do infrastructure projects within the Trunk C roads, which includes farm access roads. It will also have governance and accountability structures to ensure that those funds are judiciously utilized. Now, when you look at roads, for example, 486 roads currently are being, projects are ongoing by the Federal Ministry of Works. Their budget is about 929 billion naira for 2025. That's about $606 million. Additionally, it costs about $1.3 million, depending on the terrain, depending on the quality of road, and depending on the region you are in, to construct 1 kilometer of road. Okay? Now, when you look at the budget of 606 kilometers, and you consider the fact that the government owns about 36,000 kilometers of road, the question you're asking yourself is, how can the government balance between its ongoing projects, which, in my own opinion, has issues on procurement inflation, and the budget that is allotted to road infrastructure in Nigeria? Which was why this idea of, coming up with a 5% surcharge. The National Assembly initially proposed 10%, but then they came down to 5% surcharge that should go to road maintenance for Trunk A roads across Nigeria, which Trunk A roads, national access and ports infrastructure gateways, came in to bear. And it expects that, for example, when it did sensitivity analysis in 2024, it have generated about 796 billion naira in terms of revenue for just PMS. In 2025, for example, if that was to be implemented, it would generate about 1 trillion naira, about 625 million US dollars. But now the question is, on the other side of it, the price of petrol has gone up 382% within the last 24 months. Okay? Nigerians have watched inflation go up above 40% for food. Headline inflation, 32%. Prime lending rate, 32 to 35%. Per capita income is below $800 US, right? I don't believe the MBS numbers because the share of fuel and food alone is about 80%, right? And the reason why the MBS numbers is reflecting 21.8% is because the contribution of energy to the basket for calculating cost price index was reduced from 20% down below 5%. The contribution for food was reduced from 60% to 50.8%.
Yeah, so in other words, Nigerians have watched, I want you to land on that point so we don't lose that
Nigerians
thought.
have watched the cost of living go up. They are barely able to feed. They are barely able to survive. So the question is, if you're asking Nigerians to sacrifice more by demanding an extra 45 naira per litre of PMS in Nigeria for about actual true north of consumption, 32 million litres per day, what is the government sacrificing? Tinubu came in 2023 and the first thing he did was to buy a new jet for 150 billion. What's the moral hazard? What are you telling Nigerians? How is a father telling his child to do something and he is not showing example?
Okay.
So the moral hazard the government has today is that Nigerians don't trust anything the government says until they see.
Great, because the government makes the case for this law that, which is to your first point and your first argument, is to raise money for infrastructure. And you have also highlighted the challenge that there's not enough budget for construction of roads across the country. But on the other hand, you have the question of morals and leading by example, accountability, do as I say, not as I do. So how do we then strike the balance? Because the law is there. And the Minister of Finance can decide it's time tomorrow, even though, Mr. Oyedele has enough faith in the minister to say he's wise enough to know when this should come into effect. But the law is there. It has been there for over 2 decades. And there are fears that it will be implemented now. The question is, how then do we, account for those roads and cater for Nigerians who are already overstretched? There has to be a balance. Is it possible to even strike that balance?
Adeshua, the government has set up what they call the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Fund, Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Agency. I would like to ask the government what law empowers it to set up Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Agency. I would like to ask the government, in the subsidy savings from you not paying subsidy under recovery on the price of PMS like you used to before Tinubu became president in 2023, where are the subsidy savings? Look at the domestic crude allocation, 300,000 barrels.
It says they are with the state governors.
It's not reported to the Federation. I would like to ask the government, are all the revenues that are generated, especially from oil and gas, especially from lifting crude on a daily basis, are all the revenues actually reported to the Federation? And what's the Nigerian Governors Forum doing about it? These are the questions that Nigerians are asking. If you're not accountable to them, if you're not showing them your 2 hands open, you don't expect them to sacrifice more. Nigerians have sacrificed a lot since 2023. They've watched exchange rate go up from 751 per dollar, where President Tinubu met it when he became president in 2023, to 1,514 naira per dollar today. And the government is saying that it's stable, even if naira is undervalued by about 28 to 30%, right? Custom duties has nearly tripled in the intervening period. The price of PMS has gone up 382%.
Yeah.
So what exactly is the government showing Nigerians to make them believe that if another 45 naira per litre is added as a surcharge on the price of PMS, on paper it looks good because, like I said earlier, the Ministry of Works, even if it's bedeviled by issues around the true value, actual value of the price of these roads per kilometer, right? And we have to go to a zero-based budgeting system and strengthen our procurement laws to be able to achieve that. Yeah, they have a debt of lack of resources to actually build road infrastructure and maintain road infrastructure.
So what's the alternative? How do we then generate those funds? And are you asking that this law be quashed, be erased from the law?
Adeshua, let the government account for subsidy savings. Let them tell us where the subsidy savings are actually going to. Let the FAC come out and tell us if revenues that they declare on a monthly basis are actually what is the total of what comes to the Federation on a monthly basis. It's important. Because I believe that in this time when things are very difficult for Nigerians, I personally am a citizen, I'm experiencing the brunt, I'm buying petrol at 890 naira per litre, and the cost of food, the cost of everything.
It does trickle down.
It trickles down, you know. Let the government account for the revenues it gets first. Let the politicians in Abuja, I mean, look, the president was going to France for holidays for 10 days, and I don't know what he had to do in Abuja. To rent a jet for 1 day is $25,000. Sanwo-Olu and the governor of Imo State flew to Abuja to bid the president farewell.
Oh, we cannot say what they were doing exactly in Abuja.
It's taxpayers' money. It's money that belongs to the people. Are politicians in Nigeria showing Nigerians that they mean well? It's not talk, it's action. So if the resources that are given to you, how are you using the resources?
Okay.
How are you coming to ask for an extra 45 naira per liter?
So if I get you, you're saying that this is not even about timing for you. It is that the money exists elsewhere and they can use it, because you keep asking, where's the subsidy savings? Are you saying subsidy savings is enough to construct this road?
And this is why in the domestic crude allocation, I believe that the Nigerian Governors Forum and the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission needs to ask the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy where 300,000 barrels of crude actually is going to, which is supposed to constitute subsidy savings. This is a question that he needs to answer.
The finance minister. What about the governors who have been, telling us they are increasing wages because they are getting more subsidy savings from the federal government?
I'm not going to make excuses for the governors or hold brief for them. That is another issue entirely. But you also need to understand that the devaluation of the naira, and the interest rate hike actually led to the state government loans that they had existing. It ballooned. So, for example, on the US dollar loans, debt component that the state governments had, their loans ballooned. On loans that they owed, the interest rates ballooned, fair value gains on loans ballooned. The cost of servicing those loans ballooned. I'm not making excuses for them. I think the governors have underperformed, depending on the states. They've not done well by their people. It's another conversation entirely. But the question we're asking now today is, does it make sense today to implement an extra 45 naira per liter of PMS, of AGO, and Jet A1? The price of ticket has gone up significantly in the last 24 months, considering what Nigerians are going through. Is there a way to raise revenues to implement the construction of roads?
Yes.
The answer I'm giving to you, Adeshua, from what I understand, is that there is, and that we need to inquire on the revenues that comes to FAC on a monthly basis, and if what comes to FAC and is reported is actually what comes to FAC and is reported.
Great.
And we need to ask the finance minister for that.
A fantastic place to leave it. Thank you so much. Questions raised and your answer given, but the finance minister has his own to answer. I think that's a place to leave it. Kelvin Emmanuel, economist and energy expert. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.